All right, let's begin with slide one, that is policy management objectives. Let's begin by setting the foundation. The objective of Guardium policy management is not simply to monitor traffic, it is to intelligently interpret, evaluate, and respond to database activity based on structured rule system. So you learn how to identify different Guardium policy types, understand how rules are structured and categorized, and how they behave in runtime. You'll also learn how to actually create and install a policy in Guardium, how policy rules are processed by the system, and how different types of actions such as logging, alerting, blocking are triggered. By the end of the session, you should feel confident in defining, designing, deploying, and tuning policy that strikes balance between visibility, performance, and compliance. Whether you are building an access rule, handling sensitive data leaks, or monitoring failed logins, you'll know exactly which mechanism to use and why. With that, let's move on to the next slide, that is policy overview. A policy in Guardium is essentially a sequence of ordered rules and actions designed to run in real time on the live database traffic observed by Guardium system. Now, this traffic includes all the SQL queries, logins, errors, and responses moving between clients and database servers. Each policy is evaluated live. Every rule it has triggered that has a condition and an action. The rules are checked in the order they are listed, and system stops or continues evaluation based on configuration. Rules can initiate three types of actions. They can either log the traffic, notify someone via alert, or block the operation entirely. Now, it is important to understand that these actions are executed inline, meaning they are a part of real time flow. That's what gives Guardium its power. It's not just auditing, it is actively enforcing. Let's move on to slide number 3. Let's discuss policy types and rule types. So Guardium supports multiple policy types, each designed for specific use case. At a bigger level, there are 4 types of policies. First one is data security policy. Now this is the most common, and these policies are focused on SQL level inspection. Second one is session level policies. These policies evaluate sessions based on metadata like IP addresses, user, or connection time. Then comes classification policies, which help detect and tag sensitive data in the environment. And finally, we have file monitoring policies, which track local file access, often outside of the database itself. Now, within those policies, there are 3 rule types. First one is access rules. These evaluate what the user is doing, like selecting or modifying data. Then we have exception rules. These catch abnormal conditions like failed logins, SQL errors, and anomalies. And the last rule is extrusion rules. These are powerful. They scan the data being returned by the database for patterns like credit card numbers or personal identifiers. The policy types define when the rule is triggered. The rule type defines what kind of logic is applied to the event. Let's move on to the next slide, which talks about policy rule basics. Now let's take a closer look at how Guardium handles traffic technically. When a database client sends a command to a server, that activity is captured by the STAP agent installed on the server. STAP forwards it to the sniffer on the Guardium appliance. The sniffer has 3 jobs. Number 1, analyze the traffic and determine if it's policy relevant. Second step is to parse it, which means break it into components such as session, user, command, object, result. And third one is to log it if a matching rule demands logging. Now this happens not only for commands like select or insert, but also for session level events like logins, logouts, and connection level errors. Guardium's real-time engine allows you to inspect every byte of SQL without introducing latency, and that's a key differentiator. Let's move on to slide number 5, which is construct. And here is where Guardium gets efficient. When SQL traffic is logged, logging every little query wastes space. Instead, Guardium uses constructs, a normalized representation of SQL. It strips out literal values like IDs and some other values that may appear and replaces them with placeholders. For example, if you have a query which goes something like select star from salaries where employee underscore ID equals 123, then Guardium behind the scenes will store select stars from salaries where employee underscore ID is equal to question mark. So the first time a query pattern is seen, it is stored as a construct with a unique ID. After that, only the construct ID and metadata like account and session info are logged. This drastically saves space and improves log performance, especially in high volume environments. Now, let's run through slide 6 to 8. Policy creation and installation. Policies can be created on any appliance but are executed only on collectors. Once defined, policies can be deployed across the environments. Guardium supports having multiple installed policies, and each collector evaluates traffic against the policies it has locally. Now, to install a policy, it is quite easy. Step number 1, go to Setup, Tools and Views, Policy Installation. Second step is select the desired policy. And third one is to choose to install or uninstall another. Now, after you make any modification, even the small ones, you must reinstall the policy. This ensures the current runtime environment reflects your changes. So these were slides 6 through 8. And let's talk about slide number 9 and 10, which is all about creating a new rule. Now, when you create a rule inside a policy, you define 3 key things. The first thing is definition. This is your documentation. And this explains what the rule is meant to do. Second thing is a criteria. These are your filters. Which users, tables, commands, applications, or IPs should this rule apply to? Third one is action. This is what Guardium will do when the rule matches. Do you want to log? Do you want to send an alert? Do you want to block or simply ignore? Behind the scenes, each rule generates inspection criteria that Guardium engine uses to evaluate every piece of incoming traffic. Also, always remember to specify if the rule should allow further rule evaluation to continue or halt immediately after the action is executed. Moving on to slide number 11. Guardium policy rule order and logic. Now let's talk about logic, the most powerful part of the policy design. Rule order directly impacts how policies behave. Guardium processes rules top to bottom, so place the most critical or general rule first. For example, known trusted system accounts that should be ignored to reduce the noise should be placed first. Actions like continue to next or ignore session rules affect evaluation flow. You can chain rules for layered evaluation or halt processing once a decision is made. Also, keep in mind that number 1, exception rules often takes precedence. Number 2, session level policies are evaluated before data policies. And number 3, analyzer rules like regex or pattern checks consume more resources, so place them wisely. Correct rule sequence can drastically improve accuracy and performance. Now let's run through slides 12 through 14, which is all about policy actions. Policy actions are what Guardium does when a rule matches. There are 3 types of policy actions in a broader sense. Number 1 is alerting. Now, this action triggers notifications, emails, syslog, or SNMP traps. Number 2 is blocking. Now, these action rules actively terminates the session or query using STAP or SGATE. And the third one is logging, which is nothing but it records activity with options to log just the construct or full SQL and result. So in summary, there are 3 types of policy actions: alerting, blocking, and logging. Choosing the right action is all about context. For auditing, logging might be enough. For data theft or privilege abuse, alerting or blocking might be necessary. Always consider system impact. Excessive logging consumes space. Excessive alerting leads to fatigue, and improper blocking can disrupt users. So precision matters here. With that, let's move on to slide number 15, which talks about access rule example. Now, let's look at the real world scenario. Suppose you want to monitor privileged user accessing sensitive tables. Here is your rule. So, database user is in privileged users group, object is in sensitive tables group, and the action is log full details and alert once per session. Now, this rule lets you capture and alert on every access to high risk data, but smartly, only once per session to avoid alert fatigue. Access rules are ideal for building visibility into data usage and enforcing separation of duties. Next, we talk about extrusion and exception rules, which is slide number 16 and 17. So, extrusion rules monitor what data is coming out of the database. For example, someone running a query that returns email addresses or credit card numbers. Guardium uses predefined patterns, PCRE compatible regex to identify sensitive string in result sets. You can redact that data, alert on it, or simply log it based on your policy need. Now, exception rules, on the other hand, monitor for errors and abnormal behavior. We have login failed, we have session error, or we can have SQL error. Now, they are extremely useful for detecting misuse or misconfiguration, like a script firing incorrect SQL or brute force login attempt. You can configure thresholds like alert if 3 failed logins occur within 5 minutes. Moving on to the next slide, we have selective audit trail policy. Now, in high volume environments, you don't want to log every select statement. Selective audit trail policies lets you capture only what's necessary, such as access to sensitive tables, only DML, which is insert update delete, only certain user groups. The default policy is non selective. Everything is available but not always logged. Selective mode filters traffic at sniffer level, improving both performance and log volume. Now, this lets you tune Guardium for performance while maintaining full visibility and critical paths. Slide 19 also talks about the session level policy, which is yet another type of policy we have in Guardium. So, session level policy evaluate the session metadata before any SQL is parsed. Now, this makes them fast and ideal for access control. So, these policies they look at majorly four things. One is the client IP, application name, login time, and finally the DB user. And based on that, you can choose to do three things: log the session, attach inspection, and then block or terminate it. Now, they are evaluated first, even before the data security rules, and are especially useful in blocking unauthorized tools, locations, or users right at the door. And we are at the last slide, that is slide number 20, where we summarize and wrap it up. So, Guardian policies are your engine for real time monitoring, enforcement, and response. We have learned how to define and install policies, use rule types strategically, configure precise, efficient actions, optimize rule order and chaining, protect performance with constructs and selective auditing, and leverage sessions policies for fast control. Now, with this foundation, I hope you're not just capable of building policies, you can architect a secure, scalable Guardian deployments that truly protect your data without compromise of the same. With that, we end the theoretical session of policies.